Hello and welcome. Today I am bringing you guys my most disappointing reads of 2023, and I know you're probably sitting here going, Alyssa, it's January, you're late. I'm aware everybody was putting these videos up in December, but the thing is I still read books in December. Okay, December is part of the year. I think a lot of people tend to forget that. If you guys watch Bryce over at Shelf Centered, he tends to go on a nice little rant about how December gets the short end of the stick every year, and I'm right there in agreement with him. Us December babies got to stick together on this, okay? So I read basically all the way up until the end of December, and then towards the end of December, or once I have definitely come to the conclusion that I am officially done reading, then I start doing all of my yearly wrap-up information, because what better way for me to start out January with content if I'm talking about everything that happened last year? And then, you know, you guys still have just a little bit more to look forward to. So anyways, now this is, like I said, a video that's going to be talking about my most disappointing reads. This is not a video that I'm putting out to just like hurt people's feelings or be like, oh my god, this book was trash. It's just the fact that there are books that I unfortunately had like high hopes for that disappointed me. And I am very much one of those people who understand negative and positive reviews help sell books. What one person's yuck is another person's yum. And I know with some of these books in general, there are other people who I know will actually love them for the reasons I hated them. So this is just another way of people finding books that they could possibly enjoy. But also, if you read these books and had like the same feelings, I would love to talk to you about them. If, you know, you were, you hated them for the same reasons, like, let's talk about that too. But it's definitely not the kind of video that I just want to like put out to just be like, I hated these books. It was just, I was disappointed in them because I was looking forward to them. So with that very long, drawn-out intro put together, let's just jump into this. This list does have technically 10 books, but 3 of them are actually a trilogy because I'm lumping the trilogy together. And we're going to start out with said trilogy. I no longer own the trilogy, so there's going to be a lot of pictures in this video, as I don't own any of these anymore. So the first one in this list goes to the Red Queen's War trilogy by Mark Lawrence. This was a super big disappointment for me because coming out of reading the Broken Earth trilogy, which I really enjoyed that one, I was expecting to enjoy the Red Queen's War, and it was abysmal for me, unfortunately. One of the biggest issues I had with the series overall was Jalyn. Now, for people who read The Broken Empire, a lot of people hate Jorg. I actually really liked Jorg's character. Jalyn, on the other hand, he was just insufferable. He was that sleazy, slumdoggy man who thought he could just have any woman he wanted at all times and that the world revolved around him kind of thing, and just had like that very kind of like prick attitude that I'm just like, no, I don't find you interesting. And then the side character, I'm blanking on his name, but he was the Norse character. He was interesting in the first book. In the first book, that was what drove me to go to the next book, was the secondary MC. I found him very interesting, and I found his storyline very interesting. But then by the time the second book came around, I felt like his storyline kind of like fizzled out. And then by the third book, I just did not care. I spent an entire month trying to listen to the audiobook for the third book, and I got to the point where I was like, I don't care anymore. I don't care anymore. And I decided to just DNF it. So unfortunately, it was like a super big disappointment because I was expecting to like it, because I bought all of Mark Lawrence's books based off of reading the first Broken Empire book because I really liked it. Don't do that. Don't be like me. So next on this list goes to a romance book, because as many of you probably know, I have spent 2023 exploring romance. I will talk about that more in another video, but two of my most disappointing reads this year do happen to be romance, and this first one is going to be Willa's Beast by Ruby Dixon. This is the second book in the Ice Home series, and I just this book made me uncomfortable. That was my problem with it. It made me very uncomfortable. It was like the focus was so heavy on the sex aspect that it left me very uncomfortable. The characters were in very just uncomfortable positions, like just like plot wise, when sex acts would come up, and I was just like, I don't like this. And then there was like public sex or like really loud, and I'm just like, this is uncomfortable. And a lot of it was also just really gross, the way it was presented, and I was just like, ew. And the thing is this is actually one of the more popular ones, because I am in a Discord that is very much geared towards Ruby Dixon, and oh my god, the girls go feral over Willa's Beast, and I'm just like, I'm the outlier here. I am the odd man out, and I recognize this, but actually my best friend is also the odd person out too, because she also didn't like this one. But it was just, and the thing is like, I went all through reading like Ice Planet Barbarians, like loving like pretty much all of them, and then going into Ice Home, I loved the first one, and so I was like super looking forward to the next one, because I'm like, yeah, this is gonna be great, I'm gonna love it. And instead it made me so uncomfortable that I was like, well, that's a disappointment. That's a disappointment. So yeah, that's why that one's on here. It was just very uncomfortable for me. There's lots of girls in romance who would actually like enjoy the storyline and like what happened with it, but for me, it was not working. After that, I have Sons of the Oak by David Farland. This is the 5th book in the Rune Lords saga, and it was actually where I decided to cut my ties altogether with the Rune Lords. I have a lot of issues with how David Farland just kind of like presents information in his books. He has a tendency to be repetitive to the point of annoyance. He also likes to draw things out unnecessarily, in my opinion. And on top of that, the books just have this very boring pacing to them, to where you're just kind of like, oh yeah, I'm reading that. And I actually listened to the audiobooks for his, because when I attempted to read them like physically, I was bored. I was bored, and so I was like, let me put the audiobook on, see if that'll be better, and it wasn't any better. I also just found like the plot not really that intriguing altogether. I also didn't like how certain characters' arcs ended. And I also did not like how he treated the physical description of a lot of his characters. For the most part, he was actually just, it's very, these women are just all about how beautiful they are. It's beautiful this and beautiful that, and they have a beautiful body and a beautiful face. But he also turned around, and the one character that I did actually like enjoy, just, he made sure that you as the reader knew he had put on weight. He's so fat now. He's just horribly fat. He put on so much weight. He can't run anymore because he's so fat now. And I got to a point where I was just so annoyed with it. And like, even at the end, when it's like supposed to have like this nice, happy little ending or whatever, he still managed to throw in one more, he's so fat now. And I was just like, so that was where I just decided to kind of like end my experience with him. I was hoping it would have been good, because it followed the children of the first characters in like the first like 4 books or whatever. It's either the 3rd book or the 4th book. I don't know. But it was following the children of those beginning characters. And so I was like, okay, it's a whole new arc. It's going to be something new. I thought it was going to be interesting. And unfortunately, it just didn't work for me. Then after that, I have Empress by Karen Miller. If you guys saw one of my wrap-ups, I forget which month it was, but this was in a DNF pile, because for a book written by a woman, it definitely felt like there was a lot of hatred towards women written within this book, and it was very jarring. And it also at times just felt like it was underhandedly being racist. Like it was there, and like you had to like search for it, kind of thing. And I wasn't really digging that. But the main problem I had was just how all of the women like in the world were treated. And it was just really weird, because like it's not something I was expecting to see from like a female author. And then when I started to notice like the storyline where it started to kind of bring in the whole very obvious possible racist undertones and stuff, which I did end up looking into it later on. The series does get pretty like Pretty racist. It does, actually. And I was just kind of like, oh, very white people are superior to people of color. It follows one of those kind of storylines eventually. And I wasn't here for that. So I did end up DNFing it, but it was like, I didn't have like super high expectations for it because it's the second series that I did not like by Karen Miller, but I was definitely more disappointed than I expected to be, because a lot of people were like, oh, if you didn't like Kingmaker Kingbreaker, you'll like the Empress series. But if you end up liking this series, you'll end up not liking Kingmaker Kingbreaker. And since I didn't like Kingmaker Kingbreaker, I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll like this. And I didn't like either. After that, we have the other romance book. And this was one that actually just came out, like, I think it was like around November. But Surviving Scar by Ruby Dixon. Sorry, Ruby, don't mean to put you here twice. But this one, I was looking forward to this one. So this is the second book in the Ice Clones series, which Ice Planet, Ice Home, and Ice Clones all take place on the same planet of Not Hoth. Yes, that's a Star Wars reference. And so I've read all of Planet, I've read all of Home, and then I read the first book for Clones, and so I was definitely I was so looking forward to book 2, and I was so disappointed. I think Ruby wasted a really good character on the most boring and bland plotline possible. Scar is a lizard-based alien, and they're living on a planet that is nothing but snow and ice. And instead of going the route of how do we make this lizard alien who functions the same way as a lizard here in real life, where ice cold is like, that's death for them, instead of focusing on a storyline involving how we can help this character like survive on an ice planet, which would have been so intriguing and so interesting, she decided to go the route of, well, they're clones and they have to figure out who they are. Really? You're gonna waste such a good character where you could have done some of the most interesting exploration, because I know she can, because so many of her other books have such great exploration into different things and themes and everything, and I'm just like, you wasted this guy. Like, and the thing is like, there's people out there who ate this book up and they loved it, and I'm just like, yeah, the theme of trying to find who you are and coming to terms as who you are as a clone, yeah, that's a good storyline, but I think it could have been used on someone else. I really do think it should have been used on someone else, because Scar and just wanting to see him struggle to survive on an ice planet would have just been so much more interesting, so much more intriguing. And then seeing his mate or whatever try and help him also learn how to navigate it, along with everybody else in the tribe trying to figure out how they're going to navigate keeping him from dying. And it was not explored. And I was very disappointed, because that's what I was hoping it would be about, because it just, in my head, that makes a perfect plot line. It just sounds like a perfect story and like something that's going to be very interesting. So his story ended up being very boring. I have God Killer. Technically, I do still own this, but I just don't want to go grab it. But this one was disappointing, because when it came out at the beginning of the year, everybody was hyping it up. They were like, oh my god, it's going to be the next big epic fantasy. You guys are going to love it. It's fantastic. It's great. Blah, 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 blah. And I was thoroughly disappointed with it. It went the route of the fantasy romance stuff, which I immediately didn't like. That's not my jam. There's plenty of you out there who will love it for that. But it also, I feel all the important information and the important plot line was sidelined for the fantasy romance, and I was just like, I don't care about these two people falling in love. I care about the little girl. Okay? Give me all the information about the little girl. That's what's interesting. I also feel like the world building wasn't as strong as it could have been. It was a little confusing here and there. I felt like there was a lot of details that were just like left out, which really is what confuses me sometimes when people are like, it's an epic fantasy. And I'm like, well, where's the detail? Like, whenever I think of epic and high fantasy, I think of detail. And I didn't get that with this book. And I was just like, it's very lackluster for me. And I was so disappointed, because everybody had it hyped up so high. And I was just like, you're supposed to be one of the good ones. And you left me disappointed. Now I'm sad. After that, we have A Spindle Splintered by Alex E. Harrow. This was one where everyone, when it initially came out, everyone was like, oh, this is such a great modern retelling of Sleeping Beauty. This is great. Like, it's awesome. It's a great introductory to Alex E. Harrow's work. Like, oh, you guys are going to love it. So I bought it. You know, I spent $20 on that little teeny tiny novella because I actually still own that one too and don't want to get up and get it. But anyways, this is one of those books where it's written for a particular type of audience, and I am not that audience. And that audience is the kind who don't mind an author shoving a message down your throat as aggressively as they possibly can, while also filling it with as much pop culture reference as possible. I am not the biggest fan of pop culture references. I can handle it in like small amounts, and I also I let it slide more often in middle grade books, because usually those pop culture references are like Avatar: The Last Airbender or Harry Potter or Narnia or something like that. And this book had those plus more. You know, it was like every other sentence there was like some kind of like pop culture reference, and I was just like, you're overdoing it at this point. And it became exhausting. And like, it's a novella. It's short. And I was like, this is so exhausting to read. But again, like, I've seen people on TikTok the past couple of days being like, 5 stars, loved it. And I'm just like, it's a book written for a particular type of audience. And that's the audience who, they want the fantasy, but they want that like modern representation like thrown in there too. They want those fourth wall breaks. And that's not what I want. And that's not what I thought this was going to be about. Like, I thought it was just going to be like a fairy tale retelling where a girl gets thrown into the fairy tale. But then all of the pop culture modern references got thrown in. And then the aggressive nature of trying to pound this like message into my head got annoying real fast. So it ended up not working, and I ended up being very disappointed with it. And then the last book on this list is actually a most recent read, and that would go to Thistlefoot by by Jenna Rose Nethercott. And this was more so disappointment because I was expecting something to be just a little bit more interesting and entertaining. And it initially started out that way, but then like as the book went on, it felt like it just kept going and kept going and kept going and kept going. And it was like losing its steam the more it went, and it became less interesting. The villain, it was just cut and paste. Same thing all the time. They never really did anything different. They just kept doing, like, every time the villain would like come into play, they were just repeating what they just did the last chapter, and the chapter before that, and the chapter before that. Like, it got old and boring and stale after a while, because I'm like, do they do anything else? Like, why do you keep giving me their point of views? Like, I'm not getting anything out of this. This is boring. The characters were also very, this is my personality and just this. This is my personality and just this. Like, there wasn't really much exploration into like really expanding the characters and making them feel less than one dimension, which was really kind of sad. The most interesting point of views came from the house, because Thistlefoot is a retelling of Baba Yaga. And I also, so the house, everyone knows the house with chicken legs. So there's point of views from the house, and those were actually the most interesting point of views, because the house was recounting the past with Baba Yaga and, you know, their history. And I was like, this is so interesting. Everything that happened with like the ancestors that you follow, the kids and everything, the great grandchildren or whatever, it got stale. It grew stale. And so even when you get to like the big fight at the end, like I was just kind of like, are we done yet? Like, I really, by the time I hit like 70%, I was like, should I just DNF it now? Should I keep going? Like, I even asked like in some of the discourse, I was like, should I just keep going? Should I just fight it out? And they were like, I mean, it depends. Like, you've already made it this far. So I ended up sticking it out, and I do actually kind of wish I had just DNF'd it. But I mean, it just didn't work for me. I just thought it just got a little stale after a while, and it could have been short. I think if it had been a little bit shorter, and if the villain had done a little bit more, been a little more creative, and changed up their point of views every time they came around. It could have been more intriguing, but it unfortunately wasn't. So yeah, those were my most disappointing reads of 2023. I'm hoping that next year I won't have a bunch of disappointments. I'm hoping, in 2024 I'll have a ton of books where I'm just like, these are fantastic, I love them all. But we know that's not always going to be the case. But again, if you read any of these and you loved them, I'm happy for you. That's fantastic. I would love to hear like why you guys liked them. If you also hated them and found them disappointing and didn't like them, let me know as well too. But, just a reminder, this isn't like a personal attack on anybody. We all like what we like and we all dislike what we dislike. I just like discussing what I like, what I don't like, what I found me. And that's just me. So, yeah, like, subscribe, comment, all those great things. And I will see you guys next time.